Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we have a comprehensive guide on Rezael, one of the big decks coming out from set 1. We've already shown Vanguard, so here is Rezael, the probably second biggest deck coming out of set 1, the protagonist deck. So I'm going to explain to you pretty much the whole deck build. If you guys are new to Vanguard or the Divines format, this is the video for you, giving you pretty much everything that you need to work with for Rezael, flexible options, and just kind of how this deck scales into the future. If you guys need any coaching, my Metafy link is in the bottom right hand corner. Feel free to book a session and we can get started. If you guys haven't already, click that subscribe button for all notifications on this channel. Rezael, so one of probably the best decks going into set 2 as well. Protagonist decks always get protagonist buffs anyways, right? We have seen this top in WGP Season 1 for Indonesia, coming first place, and then I think recently we saw in Taiwan as well, and I think this deck is interchangeable in the future, lots to kind of buff up this deck, and I guess this deck is flexible enough to be able to kind of toolbox nearly anything that you want. I usually have like a second tab for flexible options, and that nearly created a whole deck list in itself. But anyways, enough of that. Let's just focus on the deck first. So purposely I have used the Rezael ride line purely because if you are a new player coming out, well, I guess playing from set 1, you kind of want something that works straight away, and this ride line will work for you, right? The grade 0, grade 1, 2, and 3 are all available from set 1. So the grade 1, if essentially you ride the grade 2, you call this out in Soul Charge 1, and it becomes a 10k if you have a Rezael Vanguard. So similar to the Vanguard one, nothing too crazy. I think the good thing about this card is that it can rush early, and with synergy with some of your other cards, it actually makes the early game really good for you. Then the grade 2, so essentially when it's rode upon by a grade 3 Rezael in its card name, choose up to one grade 2 or less from your drop zone and call it out to rearguard. Synergetic with a lot of your other cards such as Tayfelt, essentially being able to proc abilities by being called by an ability, and I think that really capitalizes on what this deck actually does. So I guess reading Rezael is a card that allows you to bring back cards or call cards using ability. So the first skill is Auto Vanguard Circle. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, you can counterblast 1, choose up to 2 cards from your drop with different grades and a total grade less than equal to the number of cards in your damage zone and call them to rearguard. So if you have 4 damage, you can call a 3 and a 1. You can call a 2 and a 1, but you can't call a 2 and 2 because they're not different grades, right? 3 and 0, 3 and 1, yeah, so on and so forth. You can do the math, right? Very good because you can actually toolbox a lot from your drop zone. It's like pretty much playing Grand Blue but in standard, and I think going into the future, the bigger the card pool, the better this gets, because then you can kind of pick and choose what to call back at certain points in the game. So yeah, very scalable card, so to say, and I think this is probably going to get better as more sets release. The Divine skill, however, pretty busted, I gotta say. So it's an axe skill on the Vanguard Circle. You can Soul Blast 1, return all critical triggers from your drop zone to the deck and shuffle it, and this unit gets +1 drive until the end of turn. Until the end of this fight, you cannot ride units without Rezael in its card net, and you get this red text. So this red text applies to the player. When your damage check reveals a trigger unit other than a heal, if your damage zone has 5 or more cards, choose a card from your damage zone, heal it, and you lose this ability. So essentially it turns all of your triggers that are not heals into 6 damage heals, right? Furthermore, if you check an OT defensively when you're at 6, the OT itself removes itself, and then this guy's effect procs, so you actually heal from 5 to 4, right? So for anyone who doesn't know that ruling, well, there you go. All right, but the good thing about this effect is that you can prioritize ditching your crits, and then your opponent can't really how should I say, min-max their gameplay based on how many crits are in deck, because the ability to be able to return all crits back to deck is just really strong, right? Once you compress your deck, like with, you know, Tayfels, you start drawing into your stuff, and pretty much churn through your deck with Sir Gawain. Your deck becomes compressed, and then you pretty much shove all your triggers back, and then it becomes even more compressed, right? Likelihood of you hitting triggers becomes significantly higher later in the game. So yeah, Rezael, very, very strong card. Going into the main deck, so we play 3 Rezael. Persona Right is very important in this deck. The power scaling in this deck is actually really strong, and I guess really high. So you know, keeping up Persona Right is always good. Then we play 1 gigantic masher. So the skill is continuous rearguard. If your unit was placed on rearguard circle by the ability of your Vanguard Rezael and its card name, this unit gains plus 15k. Automatic 28k beta without Persona Right. If you call it off a Rezael, it's just so strong, right? If you're on a budget, you can actually replace the secondary grade 2, which I'm about to talk about, which is Sage's, for a second copy of the Masher. So Sage's skill, continuous rearguard or guardian circle. If your opponent's drive check or damage check revealed a trigger unit this turn, it gains 10k power, 10k shield. 23k, always going to hit over defensives, and it's a 10k shield. Pretty nice, right? The second skill is order rearguard circle once per turn. When this unit attacks, you can scry the top card. So check the top card of your deck and then put it on top of deck or into soul. Furthermore, you can canvas 1, perform all of the following. And then the first point explains, choose one of your opponent's 14k or greater vanguards and increase this unit's power by that unit. So what that means is that if your opponent hits a defensive, they're on 23, this unit increases by 23, right? Secondly, you can remove an overtrigger from your drop zone, choose one of your other front row units, and it gains plus 15k. So the good thing is that it procs both. So if your opponent hits a defensive, you can like super buff up your 2 front rows, which is pretty disgusting. And then if this is obviously called, after the Rezael call, then, you just dump a bunch of triggers and then it hits super big, right? You play 1 purely because you can actually find it. So if, say just is, for example, like hits the damage zone, then you hit a heal trigger, you want to heal it because, yeah, you want it in the bin, right? Then, looking at the grade 2, so we have Divine Sister Biscotti, one of the new Suckler cards from set 1. When this unit is placed on Guardian Circle from hand or discarded from hand while riding from the ride deck, you can come us 1 or Energy Blast 3 and draw a card. Really good because this deck uses 0 energy, right? So you want to maximize using the energy, so here we go. What a great card, right? The second ability is when this unit is placed on rearguard, if you Persona Road this turn, you can pay the same cost, Energy Blast 3 or Counterblast 1. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose one of them and put it on top of deck. Put the rest at the bottom in any order, and if it is not during the battle phase, you may call to rearguard instead of putting it to top deck. So multiple applications, right? So essentially you can scry for triggers, if it's during the battle phase, but then you can just call it and then check top 3, filter a card out of your deck when it's not during the battle phase, i.e. during the main phase. So yeah, lots of, I guess, ways to be able to thin out your deck, and I think that's really important in this deck because you want to compress your deck as much as possible, leaving only triggers, and then pretty much use the Divine skill to shove all the crits back, right? Secondly, we do have another grade 2, which is Cadwala. It's a pretty simple effect. So order rearguard circle at the end of battle that this unit attack the Vanguard. Yeah, if you have 4 or more units, which pretty much you always do, you can soul blast 1, retire this unit. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 grade 2 or greater unit, put it into your hand, shuffle your deck. If you did not reveal a card, draw a card. Ultimately, you always will get a card, right? It's really good because especially if you check the top 3 and you don't want any of them, you just shuffle them back. And then hope to draw like a trigger or something, because let's just say your hand is low, this card essentially refunds you a card. And it's really good with Rezael because essentially the cards that you call in the main phase are compensated by cards that disappear and essentially create cards into hand, right? So yeah, Cadwala serves a really good purpose in this role of the deck, right? Then we play for Tayfelt. This card is actually really pricey at the moment, surprisingly. Probably because, you know, the engine that this card, I guess, sits in a lot of decks, and it's just super generically strong, right? So the skill is auto when this unit is placed on rearguard other than by a unit's card ability. If you played a normal order this turn, you can soul blast 1, check top 5, choose up to 1 card with grade less or equal to your Vanguard from among them and call it to rearguard if it's a unit, and then essentially put it into hand if it's a normal order, and then shuffle your deck. So being able to just fish out for cards, compress the deck, that's what this card is there to do. The second effect is when it attacks a grade 3 or greater, if you have 4 or more units, which majority of the time you do, it gains +10. So 20k beta, 30k on Persona Ride, very, very strong beat stick to attack with. Then, probably the most important card in Keta Sanctuary at the moment, and that is Sir Gawain. Sir Gawain is so busted. This card, you must get this card, right? This card is just so good, works in pretty much nearly every single Keta deck, and it's generically good, right? So what's its skill? Auto rearguard circle. When this unit boosts, if you have more rearguards than your opponent, or if you played an order this turn, this unit gains +5k until the end of battle. That's probably one of the most important bits, and I'll explain why in a sec. At the end of battle, you may pay the cost, which is to retire this unit, check the top 2 cards of your deck, choose a card from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest at the bottom, right? First application is that it compresses the deck, right? I've mentioned this multiple times already. Compressing the deck, getting normal units out of your deck, and then pretty much divine skilling, put all your crits back. That's what you want to do. But why is the +5k so important is because when you're playing an early game, right, you drop this in front, like behind a 10k attacker. So something like a Kadwala, a Tayfelt, like it becomes 23. And 23 means you hit over defensive triggers, right? You can also put it behind your Vanguard, right? Which makes it 23 because you're on a grade 2, yeah? So lots of applications, and it's really good in the early, like literally turn 1, because you can place this behind your Vanguard and your Vanguard becomes what, like 20, 21? Like, because your opponent's not gonna commit any rearguards anyways, right? So you will always have more rearguards than your opponent. Yeah, so this card just absolutely busted. Make sure you get your 4 copies, even if you are not playing Keta. Get these 4. Like, the card is just really good, right? Then we play 3 Aerial Sage. So 2 effects: continuous rearguard when this unit during the battle this unit boosted. If you have a grade 3 or greater Rezael, it gains +5. 13k at any point when it's boosting. Auto rearguard circle when this unit boosts a grade 3 or greater Rezael, so essentially behind the Vanguard. Discard a card from your hand, you can counter charge 1 and it gains +2k. So very similar to Impale Horn for Varga, it's a 15k booster that is so strong. Like, Rezael is, like, the center column's like 28, right? Very, very strong, makes it really hard for your opponent to guard, especially in the mid to late game. It just makes it that much harder for your opponent to kind of have to deal with your Vanguard and then deal with the 2 sides coming afterwards as well. Then obviously we play Perfect Guard, so we play 3 of the grade 1 PGs and 1 Elementaria, just because Elementaria is good, right? And then we also play 2 Painkiller Angel, very generic. After this unit boosts, you can soul blast 1, retire this unit, draw a card, right? Being able to just churn through your deck, go through your deck, that's what the deck is supposed to do. Let's look at the normal orders first before we look at the triggers. So we play 1 Bracing Angel Ladder. This card is actually interchangeable. You can actually play the Chalice, and you can also play Evergreen. So those 3 options are good, but I'll explain that a little bit later in the video, just after we explain the triggers. Bracing Angel Ladder is good because at the moment the meta is Shiranui, and Bracing Angel Ladder just destroys Shiranui, and you can actually find it with Tayfelt, which is pretty interesting. So if you somehow get off the Tayfelt, then happy days, where you just add it to hand and then you laugh at Shiranui, right? We also play 4 Wisdom of Beginning that cleared the world. So I refer to this as the Regalia order. Essentially play it by counterblasting 1, draw 2 cards, choose up 2 cards from your hand, call each of them with grade less or equal to your Vanguard to rearguard, and discard them if they're not. So essentially what it says is cast 1, draw 2, call 2, and that's it, right? Really strong order, and I think it's really good because it pairs well with Teyfelt. Teyfelt really needs to be called by anything other than a unit card's ability, so calling from an order works too, right? This is interchangeable. The engine itself is interchangeable, but we'll talk about that in just a sec. So just jumping to triggers, so we play 4 heals, 8 crits, 4 of them being effect crits. Sometimes soul is an issue, and having access to a way to get soul is really good. We play 3 draws, being able to just churn through your deck more. I've said it time and time again, being able to compress your deck is really good. And then we also play the blue OT, fishing for Persona Rise, fishing for PGs, fishing for Selgaon is just really good. So yeah, additional shield, additional cards in hand, always good, right? And I think the Keta OT actually decks you out really quick. So yeah, try to avoid that. Anyways, talking about the flexible options. So the first one is the ride deck. You can actually swap the grade 1 for Tranquilla. So Tranquilla is essentially the Olden ride line. The skill is when this unit is rode upon, you can reveal 3 cards with different grades in your hand. Then top 5, choose one grade 1 or less, call it, and shuffle your deck, right? And if you did not call, then you can call this. So you can actually fish for Selgaon, which is primarily its role, but alternatively, if you just play the Rezael grade 1, it becomes a 10k beater anyways, so I guess it's like, you're rolling a little bit harder to find your Selgaon, but just start Selgaon in hand, be a good player, just draw the cards that you need, and you'll be fine with the grade 1. So that's like the minor change, you don't really have to change it. So some of the other options that we're going to go through, I explained it before, you can add in a second Gigantech Masher to be able to kind of see the card. You can also add in lag rail, so swapping out Sages for lag rail, because you have a good counter-charging engine, you don't actually use that much CB. Energy blasting is like pretty free in this deck, so yeah, like you just use the CB to be able to like draw a bunch or finish off your opponent, right? Especially when you're divine skilling, you're returning all your crits back, it's actually really, really strong. So there's actually another triple rare that came out in set 1, and that is Nobia. So the skill is when this unit is placed on rear guard, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard Rezael, you can cast 1, top 3, and search for grade 3 or less and call it, put the rest to the bottom in any order, and then if this is placed in the battle phase, you reveal it and put it into your hand instead of calling. So the good thing about Rezael, like I said before, is that it's flexible in its slots. So if you're looking at like your grade 2 slots, you can actually sub out like 1 Cadwala or 2 Cadwala for Nobia. So then you have options at certain points in the game. So don't discount this card. I think it's pretty good because it essentially a Teyfelt in a way, because of the second ability, auto rearguard circle. When this unit attacks a grade 3 or greater, if you have a Rezael Vanguard, you can soul blast 1 and it becomes 20k beat stick, right? So pretty much Teyfelt, but Teyfelt works well with the Wisdom engine. So yeah, like I said, you can swap out Nobia, even including 1 Nobia just by taking out 1 Cadwala, just to have options at any point in the game. Then Spiral Cutie Angel. So this one is, I guess, in the slot of Cadwala, like taking out slot, I guess. In the early game, you can just ditch it, soul blast 1, bottom deck and draw a card is always good. But also, when you Persona Ride, you can cast 1, top 2, choose a card from among them, put into your hand, the rest of top or bottom. Top or bottom is actually really important because then you can kind of scry. Biscotti is half of this effect because Biscotti essentially adds it to hand and then rest to bottom, right? Or top of deck, rest to bottom, or call if it's during the main phase, right? So it's actually half this effect. So you can kind of use Cutie, Spiral Cutie, and I guess it's always good, right? Because it actually works when you call off Rezael. So you can play like one of this and like search it out later, right? Truncate Breath Dragon, just another way to scry, so you can play that as well. Maple, if you Persona Ride or ride over the Rezael, then you can call it, free call. but I don't actually think the free call is necessary. So yeah, you know, Maple is still an option there. You can play a 4th aerial sage if you find that you don't have, well, don't see it enough, then you can bump it up to 4. I guess for newer players, if you do not have Sanctitude, playing a 4th PG is completely fine. So don't be bogged down. You can't find Elementaria Sanctitude or it's too expensive. Just play the 4th PG, play the game, and be done with it, right? And then you can play 2 Topaz. 20k shield is good, and sometimes you can just like top 5 call 1, which is always good, right? So yeah, Topaz is that. You can also bump up the number of painkillers in the deck, and there's actually a surprisingly interesting grade 1 that I found, which is Knight of Brave Advance Cardugan. So if you play the normal order this turn, it becomes a 13. When this unit is placed on rearguard, you can cast 1, search your deck or drop for uplifting him and put it into your hand. So uplifting him is a normal order that essentially says Soul Blast 1, choose 2 of your rearguards, gains +5, and then at the end of turn you can discard a card and then put it back into your hand from your drop. So interesting little combo there. But yeah, that's, I guess, more budget friendly if you can't afford Teyfelts and stuff like that. Some other options, so like I said, the Chalice can be interchangeable for the ladder that's currently in the deck, as well as Evergreen Transfer, Anti-OT, 25k shield, always good. You only really have one other Blitz order, which is your Sanctitude, so if you're, you know, wanting another way of bigger shield, then, you know, Evergreen is completely fine too. There is actually another normal order that came out in set 1, and that is a Warrior's Rest. So play this with Energy Blast 2, choose 2 of your units, and they gain the ability when this unit boosts, this unit gains +10. So it essentially buffs up your Sogowans to 23, which is actually pretty disgusting. And then if you have 5 or more units at the time that you play this card, you can draw 1. So again, just ways to be able to draw. And I guess if you can't afford Teyfelt and Wisdom, you can actually put in Nobia and this, because it kind of serves the same purpose. Nobia calls, and then this card draws your card, which is equivalent to Wisdom and Teyfelt being able to call and, I guess, replenish the cards that you call, right? Then looking at triggers, I explained it before, you can change the blue OT to Keta, but just be wary of deck out. And I guess if you're a budget player or a new player just trying to get into the game, the Keta OT is completely fine. Red OT is a bit more offensive than the blue one, so if you want an extra attack, then that's completely fine too. Viable options, blue and red, are probably the best 2 OTs. You can interchange the draws to fronts, but I think the draws are more applicable in this deck because you're trying to fish through the deck for all your combo pieces, all your normal units, kind of like drain out of normal units, draw through your deck, and then compress it with the Divine skill. Then if your meta calls for it, effect heals, because, you know, sometimes in a meta where, you know, Varga's dominant, then you kind of want to play the restand heal. If, you know, it's a crit relevant meta, then crit heals, and then if it's a stride dominant meta, then maybe you want to splash in some of the grade heals as well. So yeah, those are pretty much the options. It's actually a pretty long list of options, surprisingly enough. So this deck is actually very interchangeable, and like I said, you know, this deck actually has a lot of things going for it. How I usually would approach the deck is to discard the cards that you want to call back using Rezael for the ride line, while also being able to keep up the early game pressure, because I think with Sogowon replaces itself, and yeah, it's just too good not to, I guess, utilize it in the early game, because your opponent is less inclined to guard early. So if you push your opponent early, then your Rezael grade 3 and every turn after that actually makes it really hard for your opponent to guard. So if you can capitalize on the early game, it becomes very, very good. Alright, so now we're going to jump to a CFA simulation. I think this is pretty simple, nothing too super crazy, just kind of seeing how the deck operates. And I guess just kind of talk a little bit about mulligan choices and what to kind of discard for the ride line. Like I said before, you kind of want to discard cards to the drop zone that you kind of want to call back. Like this hand is pretty good, right? The Sages is pretty good to kind of drop in the bin because then you can call it out using your Rezael grade 3 once you ride up. So let's return the draw. I think the others are like pretty good to kind of churn through the deck in the early game. So get 3, Persona Rod's always good. We kind of need that for a little bit later anyways. Let's just say we're going first. So draw 1. Kind of want to ditch the Sages. The Sages here is not very good in the early stages of the game. Yes, we would like to get an energy crest. Let's just pop it there. Enter, right? And then your opponent attacks you. So I guess this turn you kind of have to be careful because if you guard here and you start attacking with like units in the front row, then your opponent's going to deny you. So you kind of want to take this first one. There are merits where, you know, you just drop a 15, call it a day. But I think being able to multi-attack on a grade 3 is like really good. And you have no way to self-damage yourself. So you take 1, your opponent doesn't crit you, and then stand and draw. So here we have like double Rezael, which is kind of annoying. We do also have Teyfelt, but Teyfelt can't be really called by anything. Painkiller is good because then the grade 1 essentially calls out to get you your +1. And I think Painkiller behind the Vanguard is probably better than the Sagawa on the rearguard. So Teyfelt here is not super great, but I guess like you can kind of chain it for next turn. Yeah, so let's ditch the Rezael. We'll find more Persona rides later anyway, so let's ride the grade 2. The grade 1 skill, essentially it calls out and again +2 if it's a Rezael Vanguard, so sorry, I lied. But this makes it really strong, right? Your opponent's not going to commit anything. So this is like a really, really good field, right? Because 18 against an 8, your opponent can't just 15k guard, and then 21 hits it over defensives, yeah? So let's go 18 to Vanguard, check 1, okay, cool. And then let's just say we saw +1, we sack this and draw 1. And then this is 21, your opponent doesn't hit a defensive, literally has to 15k this or eat another attack. You know, oh, sorry, I had to soul charge that. Sorry, I had to soul charge the Cadwalla, sorry, for the grade 1. So I drive check the Sanctitude and then Painkiller draws me 1. And then this attacks Sagawan skill, I sack it, check top 2. Alright, the order here is really good because you essentially can combo with the Teyfelt on the next turn. So I'll add this to hand, rest to bottom. Triggers to the bottom is always good because then you're compressing your deck, right? And then yeah, that ends my turn. Let's just say, you know, your opponent attacks your Vanguard for 1. Let's just take 1. Draw trigger is pretty good. Draw 1, and your opponent like drops a 15. So here Biscotti is good because let's just say it's like 5 for OT pass. Then you just like Energy Blast 3 and then draw a card. That's actually really efficient, right? So now that the attack is guarded, your opponent doesn't OT you. And yeah, so stand and draw. This is actually really good because now you can chain the Teyfelt into essentially a full board. So let's just say we ditch the draw here, we ride Rezael. Rezael obviously is on attack, but the grade 2 essentially calls a grade 2 or less from the drop. And essentially you have a lot of targets here. So you have like Sages, you can call, you call Biscotti, you can call the Sagawan, you can call the Painkiller. I think Sagawan is probably the best pick purely because it can sack itself, right? Your opponent is also on a grade 2, so essentially your grade 1 will be able to swing solo for 10k. I guess what you can do is like purely because we have the order, we don't actually know what we're going to draw into. So if we draw into something like garbage, then yeah, you kind of want to keep them in the like the units that you call. If it's like 2 grade 2s, you kind of put it in the front row. So I guess you can put like the Sagawan here, right? This is better as an attack, so you keep it in the front row. You play the order right, so you can come +1, draw 2. Like, yeah, like that, right? That's absolutely terrible. So what you kind of want to do is like something like this, Tayfelt, and maybe like Blade Feather. Yeah, Blade Feather is probably the best one because you can essentially create soul, right? Your Vanguard's already a threat, so unless you see an Aerial Sage, then it's good. But I guess like it depends on what you call from Rezael, right? So I guess like putting that here is okay. Tayfelt skill, you can soul blast 1 top 5 and choose a card to call if it's a unit card. So you can soul blast that Kadwala. Soul blasting is really important. You kind of want to see what's in your soul as like calling targets. So here Kadwala is really good to soul blast. Then you check the top 5. Check top 5 here. Aerial Sage is really good, right? So you just like call the Aerial Sage. I guess the Selgowan's good as well, but Selgowan, you kind of already have it like on the rear guard, and Aerial Sage, like most decks, they can't get rid of this, so it's like always going to be a counter charge, right? So let's call that, shuffle the deck, cool, and then this game's +2 because I have a Rezael Vanguard. The good thing is that you don't need to use the crit now. You can use the crit on the second swing because you can call stuff out that is like, you know, that hits over defensives. So Sages is a really good call over the grade 1. And then I guess like Kadwala is also good, but you can only call like what, grade 2 and a grade 0 because you're only on 2 damage, right? So let's just say, you know, your opponent's on grade 2, so that's like 10k, asking for 5k shield. Let's just say they guard it, 5k shield again, they guard it. So here, this attack here, you kind of have to see how your opponent guards. So if they guard the first one, then you kind of want to solo swing because it's not economically good to, I guess, just boost swinging because 23, they'll eat it. So asking for another card in hand is probably better. And because the 10k doesn't work because your opponent's not on grade 3, it's pretty good to just kind of chip at 10. And then this is like what, +5 +2. So it's like what, 28. And then skill you can cast 1, and then I call a grade 2 and a grade 0. Well, I can call 2 1s. Oh no, but I have to call 2 different grades. So like Kadwala's good. Kadwala and a 0, I guess. This is really awkward because, so I guess if you want to call something that is okay, then, I guess you can call the starter grade 0. That actually matters a lot, right? Because 6 + 4 is 10. So like, you can call this here and here. That's actually pretty good, right? Because if your opponent takes this and hits a defensive, you hit a trigger before that, you just dump it on here and it will always hit over a defensive trigger if your opponent obviously doesn't OT or hit 2 defensives. So let's just say your opponent takes this, so you grab 2, check 1, check 2, unlucky. Your opponent did attack with the rear guard before, so let's just say 10 goes to the rear guard, they didn't intercept. And then you have more rear guards than your opponent, so this is what, 23? So, oh, sorry. Probably better like that, right? And then obviously 28. So Kadwala here, well, the crit actually goes in and actually changes this number to 25. So that's actually really relevant, right? 25 against a 10 means you're asking your opponent for 20k, which is very inefficient in the early game. So here Kadwala, you can proc either one. I think Kadwala here is okay, but you know that the bottom card is a heal, so you actually want to proc Selgowan first, because we used the Selgowan on the previous turn, right, and the deck didn't shuffle. So let's proc the Selgowan, check top 2. Well, that's pretty good. We didn't draw into the OT. Let's put the OT to the bottom. We'll grab this to hand, and then the Kadwala, you can soul blast 1. So here it doesn't really matter. I guess the crit sometimes, you know, the intersoul matters. Retire this. Then check top 3, put one of these to hand. Biscotti is okay. PG's okay. We have 2 PGs in hand. Would more PGs be better? I think Biscotti, just to be able to get more normal units on the guarding turn. So we'll grab this, shuffle these back. and that's the turn, right? Sure, you could have used Aerial Sage, but I don't think the discard 1 here is relevant because you're eating damage anyways. If your opponent's not damaging you, then they're not winning the game. So I think the Aerial Sage, discarding 1 for a counter charge might not be worth it. So I guess it's like 2k less. 26, 28 doesn't really matter against a 10k anyways. But yeah, that's that. And then let's just say your opponent, you know, attacks 5 times. So let's just say, you know, guard 15. Oh, actually, you actually want to guard with the crits, right? Because you're going to return them with the divine skill. So guard with 15, guard 15, take 1, take 2. Let's just say your opponent's like really trigger happy, you know, heal's pretty good. Let's heal 1. You would actually, none of these cards really matter, but I guess like healing the crit would be good, but we don't have any crits. So let's heal the heal, I guess. And yeah, you're on like what, 23k base. So I guess we can like drop a 15 so that we keep that damage open for the next turn. All right, let's proceed to our turn. Stand and draw with Persona Ride, draw 1. All right, so Bracing Angel Ladder here. Let's just say we're not playing against Shurunoi, it doesn't really matter. So we put into Soul and draw 1. Activates the ability for Tefelt. Or actually your Surgowans as well, right? Let's say 16 Surgown here is pretty good. Kadwala there and double Surgown, right? Like that's really good. So to min-max our usage of cards on the board, I think this is pretty good, right? So what you can do is like go 20 first. Soul Boss 1, let's say we blast the Bracing Angel Ladder, whatever. Sack top 3, add 1 of these to hand. Silgan's probably better. We don't need the order now, and then just shuffle the rest back to deck, sure. And then let's just say your opponent hits a defensive, so this is like 16 by itself, so it can't really hit. But we did play an order this turn, so this is what, 29. Pretty good. Let's sack top 2. Biscotti's good. We have like what, 6 energy. Put the rest to bottom. Rezael. So this gains +5 because I have a Rezael Vanguard. So here's like 36. I guess discarding 1 here is like pretty good, right? To countercharge 1. Makes it 38. Makes it really annoying for your opponent to guard. I guess 36 is already annoying. But they hit a defensive, right? So let's discard, countercharge 1, gains +2, and then Rezael's skill, you counter +1. You kind of want to counterblast the ones that you want to kill out, so I guess Aerial Sage is the most important. Then you call 2, so it's a grade 3 and a grade 1, or a 2 and a 1, I guess. Biscotti here puts it into hand. So Sages and something else might be better, I think. So like maybe Sages and this. Your opponent did hit a defensive. So I guess like this and Sages is like not bad, right? So you call those 2. This gains +2 because you have a Rezael Vanguard, and then Sages gains +10 because your opponent hits the defensive. 38 to Vanguard, cool. We don't actually need the divine skill yet. We can go through 1 more turn because we have like what, double PGs. So you don't need to use the divine skill yet. Check 1, check 2, cool. 3rd PG is always good. We're surviving to the next turn unless your opponent's super sacky. And then Sages, oh, I guess we don't want to attack with Sages first because the card that we want to leave on top would hopefully be a trigger, right? So then, because we played an order, this is what, 33, sacks itself, check top 2, pretty good. Let's add some Biscotti, this to bottom. Sages attacks. When it attacks, you look at the top card of your deck, and it's a Kadwala. Kind of want to put it into Soul. Don't really need it. And then you can Kalos 1. Your opponent's like a 23k, so let's increase it by 23. It's like a 50-something K attacker, right? 56k attacker. Really, really strong. So yeah, that's that. Cool. Let's just say your opponent lives, yada yada. let's just say we burn like all of our PGs and like pretty much everything. Like we double biscotti to draw 2, and then we burn like all of these. Yep, cool, because your opponent's like really strong. Cool, we burn all of those. Stand and draw. So here, 12 cards in deck is actually really good because now we can get towards our divine skill. So we don't have Persona Ride, which is kind of annoying. I guess the draw doesn't make any of these numbers relevant because you can kind of put it like this. This is like 30, right? And then say just check top. So I guess Rezael's skill, we Soul Blast 1. Then we return all critical triggers back to deck. So let's just say we return this. What other triggers are there? Those are heals, crits, crits, crits. Did I miss a crit? I think that's it. I'm pretty sure that's it. That's all the crits, right? We return all the crits and shuffle until the end of the battle. This game's +1 drive. And then, yeah, heal on 6, right? That isn't a heal. So Sage's skill on attack, check top. Ooh, that's pretty good. Let's leave on top. Save there. And then, you know, this is like 20 by itself, 30 boosted. But what else can we call? We kind of want to see what we call. So it's like 2 and a 1 or 3 and a 1. 3 and a 1's like all right. So maybe we should have taken one more so we can go 3 and a 2. And then I guess we go through one extra card in deck, so it becomes 11 cards. So that, you know, crits are easier to see. So maybe we call 3 and a 1. So you actually don't really want to boost. Yeah, let's not boost. So this is like 20, right? And then this is +5. So this is like 26. Let's discard this for the hell of it. +2 is like 28. And then skill, +1. We call a grade 3 and a grade 1, or a grade 2 and a grade 1. So I think grade 2 is better because the Tayfelt will go in for our kill turn anyways. So I think grade 2 here, and like Sir Gawain, I guess. Like Sir Gawain doesn't really matter. Painkiller doesn't matter as well because they're both on boost anyways. But yeah, let's just call these 2. It'd be good if we like saw the gigantic masher, but we haven't seen that all game. So I guess we'll call it like this, 28. We know the top card is a crit, so you can actually bump up one of the sides if it's lacking power, or if your opponent hits a defensive. You check 1, crit. Oh, how do we know that? So this is like 18, it's like 20. So I guess maybe we'll pump it here, and then check 2, whatever. That means like our whole deck is like super compressed, right? 18 and 30, cool. Let's just say, you know, your opponent takes 1, cool, and then you take another one. Damn, unlucky. So like, let's just say if that was like a crit, right? Then it becomes a heal, and you heal 1. So then your Vanguard is fat, right? So yeah, just a basic simulation on kind of how the deck works. So for anyone who's new, or anyone who essentially picked up Rezael in set 1, this is kind of how like the basics play it. Yeah, nothing too crazy. So back to the deck itself. The deck log code is 1XUW8. I will add it to the description below for, I guess, some guidance. I can't save this deck log for some reason, so alas, you guys kind of have to remember what cards are on the flexible list. But yeah, that is pretty much the deck list for Rezael. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, pop a like, comment down below what you guys think of the deck in general. I think this deck is actually really, really good, and going into the future, it's only gonna get better because more card pull means more cards you can call from the bin, and it just makes this deck much, much better. If you guys haven't already, click that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.